I'm already seeing that the user behavior is shifting, right? In general, because a lot of people are dependent on AI
Right.
already, but if you ask people, everyone's kind of hesitant about using it for like financial use cases.
That sounds like something that's going to get massively adopted.
If we don't really show what the end-to-end experience really look like, it'll be hard for people to really understand it. Back to the beginning of like telling that story and helping people really see the vision.
How do you make sure that agents aren't going rogue? Welcome back to The Roll Up. We are your hosts. I'm Andy.
I'm Robbie, and this is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy a quick word from some of our awesome partners who make this show possible.
Innovating finance, global, institutional, and on-chain. Deep liquidity to drive capital efficiency. Now maximize yields on institutional-grade liquid staking with METH. Unlock $1 trillion of capital via Bitcoin. All of this secured by Mantle's treasury of billions in stables and ETH capital pools. This entire ecosystem is coordinated by a vast network of seasoned VCs that are aiming to create the next generation of banking and financial technology. This is Mantle.
We're in New York City now. Sean, you're in town. Mm-hmm. We just had an amazing roll-up magic happy hour last week, which unfortunately you couldn't be here for.
So much FOMO.
But it's good to have you in town. Two fellow Canadians in the mix.
Yep.
Big couple weeks for you guys recently. How are you feeling, Sean? How are you doing with your building? How are you feeling?
Pleasantly surprised by the overwhelming support and response and positivity around what we've been working on. And feeling tired because it was a lot of work leading up to it, but now very energized because people are really resonating what we're building on. So this week in New York, planning, with the team on what to do next.
Yeah, man. So we're going to talk a lot about AI today, AI and crypto, what you guys are doing at Newton. But it would be remiss to not understand a bit about who you are and why you got in this space. Some of the interesting things that I've came to learn is about your early career at Waterloo, as well as selling a company to one of the largest development companies in the world. So who is Sean and how did you get started in this interesting design, computer science kind of background?
Yeah, so if we were to go back to the high school times, I was in like 5 different bands. Most are jazz band, and then I told my dad that I'm gonna do music, and he's like, but I have to take 5 jobs, right, to make a living. And then my dad told me, hey, what about this? You can take 1 job and make a living by being a software engineer, and you can play on the side. Yeah. So I said, oh yeah, that sounds nice. So I like computers. I had one when I was small. So I was always interested in like playing around on the computer. And so eventually picked the last choice was go to Waterloo for software engineering.
So music was your first choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I always liked building things. I always kind of tinkered a little bit on the computer as a kid. And when I went to Waterloo, I formally learned programming, but I always had this knack to simplify really complex concepts. So in Waterloo, build all these different little tools that streamline, building software. And then when I was graduating, at that time, Docker 0.3 came out. And we thought this is like an amazing technology. But it was really hard to get started with Docker on like Mac and Windows, whereas it first started within like the Linux community. So we thought, let's add a nice UI to it and streamline a lot of the setup, like because you need to install this thing called VirtualBox before you can use Docker. So we streamlined all of that and then made it one click. So you can really experience the wow factor running a container on your computer. One of the demos we shown was like how easy it is to run like a Minecraft server with one click, and then so that's like how it got started. And it was called Kitematic, what the project it was called, and we ended up open sourcing it. And then basically right after we open sourced it, Docker reached out to us and was like, hey, like, what if we do this together? So then, they're like a huge rocket ship and one of the major players in dev tool and then infrastructure. So we jump on the ship and we further improved on the product to make sure Docker feels like it's running natively on your computer. So we had got these kernel hackers from Cambridge. They're like super great, and they were able to get in the hypervisor and install like this Linux distro in there.
So Docker effectively acquired Kitematic then.
That's right.
And that was like your first founder kind of exit moment where you built something and then this larger company came in, kind of validated your idea, and then that led to that eventual being acquired.
And they continued with the product into Docker Desktop, right, which is a way to run Docker natively, and that's being used by millions of developers monthly for their regular development workflows. So very proud of what the whole team have done there. Just taking something so complicated and making that run seamlessly, right, on the computer was a technical challenge, both from like a user experience perspective, but also technology, because there's so much underneath. It's almost like exposing the internal hypervisor, some pretty complicated tasks there. So to actually make it run so seamlessly.
What were some of your biggest learnings when you were building out Kitematic, and how did that lead you to any challenges, pitfalls, and take those learnings now in your second iteration of being a founder with Newton and Magic?
I would say is this obsession about user experience, no matter what. No matter if your target audience is a developer or a regular person, just try to shave off any complexity as you can. And overall, telling a story around that too, right? Like it's not just about, we have less clicks now, but it's more like, what can you do? What is that wow factor within the first 15 minutes, right? For a dev tool. It's to really nail that, right? And that like Minecraft thing was like one of the use cases that we tried.
Yeah. So now that it's your second iteration being a founder, you've been building in crypto for a while, found Ethereum in 2016, kind of shook your perception as to what is possible by building online. Then you kind of came to this embedded wallets idea, which kind of comes back to your user experience prerogative that you've just shared. Talk us through about founding Magic, what that entailed, and why you guys decided to go all in on this embedded wallets idea. And then we can get into some of the AI stuff as well. I think I fell in the Ethereum rabbit hole right after Docker in end of 2016. Before, I wasn't as bullish if it's just cryptocurrencies. Okay.
But Ethereum really showed use cases, and there was a lot of vision, right, in terms of what it can accomplish. DeFi were a concept being talked about, like NFTs, and I felt like I was able to learn so much just from being in the space. Not only from like a technologist perspective, but also understanding money, understanding financial systems, and art even. There's rarely anything that's at the intersection of all these things. So I was just intrigued to the max, right?
Yeah.
And so I tried to build two projects, like consumer facing. Like one is like getting paid in crypto, but it was like really, really early. And when we're doing user testing, like no one could get started because at that time it was the de facto onboarding was through browser extensions and writing down the seed phrase like a pirate, right? And so, and we, yeah, I wasn't able to really get those off the ground because for me, I was really compelled by the vision. I want to bring more people in the space instead of just sort of focusing on the vocal minority, right? So that was sort of always trying to get more people involved. And so Embed Wallet it came up after I realized that there's just not a lot of infra. The vision is so great, but there wasn't great infra to get billions of users in. And Embed Wallet was like the first stab at solving that problem. It's pretty simple, right? Just like, hey, we can provide this Stripe-like SDK where developers can embed in their application to create a crypto wallet using Web2 login. Yeah. So pretty simple. And we tried, obviously a huge amount of work underneath to make sure it's like trusted, compliant, secure, invented our own like key management approach called DKMS, basically like kind of like a cloud-based ledger sort of style security, making sure users can maintain control right over their private keys, and just grew that since mid 2018. Relentlessly focus on like UX, making it easy for developers, trying to get the best applications on board. And yeah, I can't believe it's almost 7 years. Yeah. I just crossed 7 years, in fact, last week. And yes, till today, Embed Wallets have onboarded over 50 million unique wallets. And we work with some of the top applications like Polymarket, Helium, Wallet Connect, Immutable, to some of the enterprises like Mattel, Forbes Web3, and also Naver in Korea. So a wide spectrum of different applications we're servicing. And with Newton, it was really an idea that came last year, where we're always relentless in terms of like what new can we do to improve UX. So at that time, there were a lot of conversation around like chain abstraction, right. Just making chain invisible with like unified balance, everything just interop like seamlessly. I think that's like a really compelling vision for UX. But where it really started clicking for me was I was in some of the AI meetups because I'm in SF. There's a lot of AI stuff going on, and some people showed me this demo around tool calling. So to put it simply, it's just AI calling APIs, right? And they can make decisions and using all these tools to get some stuff done. At that time, I saw this demo on like getting the current weather from an API, something pretty simple. But then like it started clicking for me that, hey, this is like where AI and crypto can really intersect. Because crypto is like all these open, transparent APIs that can be called to move like programmable assets around, instead of like these siloed APIs in like private databases. So I think, so that's when it started clicking for me. So not only you can make chains very interoperable, you can also make these workflows super streamlined with AI automation. So we were like prototyping and building some demos towards the end of the year. And yeah, the narrative and project really started taking more shape the more we started working on it. And we identified that, so now a lot of people are working on like tool calling, like MCPs. But we feel like the biggest gap, right, is really the trust and security aspect of it. Because I do believe the capability of AI and crypto are going to like drastically increase. A lot of them are open source, which is great. All these plugins, tools. So we feel like there's a huge opportunity to use what we've know, the experience that we have to make something that is sort of this trust layer that bridges the gap. Because a lot of people see the capabilities of AI, but they don't really trust AI.
Yeah.
Right. So
and I also have the thought when I'm using these LLMs and such, like where is my inputs and my prompts going, right? Like where is this data being stored?
Yeah.
Who has control of this? So that's one thought on the AI sector. On the intersection of AI and crypto, I think it's been kind of a rough start for that convergence. I think about AI as scaling intelligence, right? There's so many more, effectively, there's so much more brain power being used by these LLMs now today. But bringing that into the crypto space kind of just started with like these agent with meme coin ideas, and then bring that out to now we have like decentralized modeling and decentralized data, and there's kind of like this more robust kind of sectors being opened up. But I think the one thing that is clear is that this is a match where, as you said, crypto has so many of these APIs that these AI and these agentic, forms can use. It does seem that there's a much better fit for agentic finance per se, within blockchain rails or crypto rails, more so than the traditional kind of credit card, debit card, ACH, wire kind of rails. And so I'm curious how you think more broadly about this convergence from your perspective, and where you see the direct application of AI and crypto kind of happening right now and in the future, because I just think that we haven't really seen that much in the space quite yet that's really that interesting. And so I'm curious how you see it differently, and kind of where you think that there's actually real product market fit, and where that's going to expand to.
Yeah, I would say everything is a little bit early, right? Like the tool calling stuff like really started picking up like last year. And then now everyone is like building and trying different things. Whereas I see the agentic user experience have a lot of potential is really around this concept of like this crypto super app, right? Like a lot of people think about that. But if you were to really imagine it before agents, I could imagine like this super complex UI, right? Because like you're trying to build a flow for every single user.
I mean, yeah, that's what we've been doing on chain for the last 4 years, is like all these different apps and the ledgers and the clicking and the signing, and
Right.
Yeah.
And it just becomes this like spaghetti user experience that's really hard to navigate. But in some ways, you also need those kind of features to service all those use cases. But I think agentic experience kind of convert that into a very elegant user experience, where it's like a single prompt, and that gets translated into the correct series of actions. And you can address different needs from different types of users in like a very elegant way without over cluttering the user experience. So I think that's inevitable. And then that really falls in line with like typical internet user behavior.
Okay.
So like this is the sense I have with like Google, right? So that early on with before Google came along, it's like complex websites with all these buttons and navigation, very hard to use, very hard to navigate for regular people. And then Google came along, it's like the first intent-driven experience, where on one simple text input box, you can start Googling your intent, things you want to search, things you want to do.
Yeah.
And that gets translated and ranked into a series of correct websites. And then you pick one that intrigues you, you go in and then go through the conversion funnel, and then finally make a purchase. But in this new paradigm, that from point A intent to action point B gets shortened massively,
right?
With automation and agent automation. So
you think there will be a future where there's going to be the majority or a lot of the new users onboarding to like just call it blockchain rails through effectively a natural language model on the front end, kind of like talking to an assistant of sorts?
Yeah,
that's the thesis here.
That's right.
So in order to actually achieve that, we need to trust and be able to work with and understand what's on the other side of what we're prompting. And that's like the problem space here.
Yeah.
Okay. So AI's role in traditional financial services is expanding to become kind of like this, like they have like robo assistant, that kind of vibe. But we're so early that that's still kind of becoming a thing in humans day to day or week to week financial interactions. But taking it to the next step is that in order to avoid some sort of like rogue agents or some sort of like malicious behavior or errors, the idea is that we need to effectively create a trust layer for these agents to interact with humans such that for their financial lives, they can have this trust in the prompt being executed correctly.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm already seeing that the user behavior is shifting, right? In general, because a lot of people are dependent on AI already, but if you ask people, everyone's kind of hesitant about using it for like financial use cases. And then that's where the trust layer could really help with that leap forward.
Yeah.
Imagine like, you can just even do simple things like, hey, watch for volatility and do X, Y, Z, or things like book a weekend travel.
Yeah, because I was gonna say I don't know about you, but I'm like I don't really share like my name or like my photos of myself with LLMs. Like I'll tell it stories or I'll ask questions or I'll provide some insight into my financial life or personal life or social life. But I try to avoid all of like the like doxing or like giving too much information or whatever, just because it's like, well, there's a certain, there's something happening here that I'm not so comfortable with. So I can totally understand the financial aspect of that too. Like now you want to trust these hallucinating agents with your capital as well.
Yeah. And then there's also the privacy component, right?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at is like the privacy, right? It's, I don't want to, who knows what the corporations are going to do with the information.
That's right.
But in this case, it's more about optimizing for the actual success of your desired financial outcome and having privacy and trust.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about actually conducting, let's call them verifiable or trusted agents, what does that actually look like from a under the hood perspective, right? So, I go into the current iteration of Newton with a DCA agent. I get to interact with that. What does that mean that we're going to actually have this kind of like trusted agent? Like, what is that? Like, what is an untrusted agent perhaps? Or kind of how do we get to this concept of a trusted agent?
Yeah. So, I like to describe that in terms of analogies, right? So it's a simple DCA example, but it's like a whole iceberg underneath of like the infrastructure that we're using. An analogy I like to use is like a self-driving vehicle. So it goes from when you go on the self-driving vehicle, you set a destination, you set like a speed.
What are those called? Waymo?
Yeah,
Waymo?
yeah.
They don't have those out here yet. I think that's just an SF.
Right, it's like an SF touristy thing.
Yeah.
It's an attraction.
So you set where you want to go, your speed, like parameters, basically.
Yeah, parameters, and then the car will follow through and then get you from point A to point B.
Well, hopefully, right?
Hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah, and then in the middle, right, you want like this secure computer, right, that actually does the task based on your parameters, right? And no one should be able to tamper with that, like not even the mechanics, right? So we actually under the hood, we use Fala network, right, to run this confidential compute. That's where the agent runs and executes these transactions. And then that goes in the next step where everything is recorded, right? That's like the verifiable part. Every turn, every action, that's recorded in like this, almost something like a flight black box, right? With like a notarized log where you can check if they did the correct actions afterwards. So we use, automata like contracts to like verify that. And then lastly, you generate a zero knowledge proof. Let's say if you want to share this information with like your insurance company or like your friends without actually releasing all the personal and the travel information, it creates this like mathematical stamp, right? And then so that's the ZK proof part, and underneath we use like succinct and risk zero. So yeah, like it's sort of this end-to-end experience demonstrating like a DCA agent with end-to-end like verifiability and guardrails.
Okay, so that is for the interaction between myself as a human and this agent. There's this kind of step-by-step process where basically using some form of ZK and then TEs with automata, you get this verifiable activity log, trusted computer, and then you get to execute all those actions. That's with me interacting with an agent. Now, Accenture has recently put up a prediction that they think that agents will interact with more agents than humans in the near future. There's this kind of swarms idea coming about where there's agents interacting with other agents. How extensible is this technology to not just be around human to agent interaction, but also with, verifiable agents amongst others? I assume it in a future where you have agents that are going out and doing these multi-step processes, or these kind of, potentially something like a vault strategy, or kind of these more complex processes will require multiple agents. So how are you thinking about this kind of combination of agent to agent interaction within the lens of this verifiable, trusted nature?
Mm-hmm. So I think, my current take would be not every agent needs to be verifiable. I think only the agents that's touching like sensitive data, whether that's finance or healthcare or other kind of administrative stuff, needs to be verifiable. And then you could have like orchestrator agents, right? Like the agent that knows about all these other agents and route you to the right agent. And then they all know about some other ones. And so like it just kind of cascades from there. But ultimately it's like a searching problem, right? Like you're starting from the user intent, and that translates into this one agent who knows about these other agent, and then so on. And then the tasks that require verifiability will be executed by those verifiable agents, and then ultimately getting your result back, right? So a lot of it is like a discoverability problem, and just finding the right agent or tools for the job, right? And we're also seeing a lot of development in like standardizing like AI agent execution as well, for example, with MCPs. So, I think it's kind of like the chain abstraction of like AI execution. So that's, like there's new standards that's being created also that could simplify this as well.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I actually think of chain abstraction and intents today as an evolution of the poor UX that crypto has had, which is now I've found that these natural language implementations of interacting on chain seem to be like the best form of like chain abstraction, or even like application abstraction that we're seeing now. And so we kind of had this idea of chain abstraction, but now we have this idea of application abstraction, which is this automation from, it's almost like removing the user from having to do the manual processes of interacting with an application. Not even, forget about a chain. We're just on applications now. And so even removing that process. And so that's more on like this kind of automation side of things. Maybe you could walk us through what your mental model is of the evolution of this kind of UX abstraction. If I kind of had the right idea here with this kind of, first was chain abstraction, now application abstraction with these natural language models. Kind of how are you thinking about the way to approach this application abstraction, and what does that really mean?
Tired of multi-chain headaches? You need Omni. Omni makes being on-chain feel like you're online. Perform any action on any chain in less than 2 seconds. It's all powered by SolverNet, Omni's breakthrough SDK for cross-chain speed, scale, and cost. To kickstart adoption, the Omni Foundation is offering $10 million in rewards for SolverNet-powered apps. Start earning today at omni.network.
Yeah, so I saw this as in like three phases, right? So when we first started, it was wallet abstraction, just making sure the wallet stays invisible in the background, almost like you're logging to a regular application. So that's with embedded wallet. We've achieved that. Now it's sort of a status quo, right, in the industry. for onboarding everyday users. And then now we move, as the blockchain started proliferating and there's more fragmentation going on, naturally chain abstraction is a super big problem. And now there's a lot of really great projects trying to solve that. So I feel like, okay, that's being taken care of. Like, what's next, right? And that's where the AI crypto intersection really works together to provide a better user experience. I see maybe 80% of DApp interfaces in the future disappearing, right, into agents. In fact, they may be easier to build by then. You don't have to manage like all this cross-chain stuff. You don't have to build a UI, which takes a lot of effort, especially for cross-chain. So I think it only sort of accelerates the number of applications being built, reduce cluttering, reduce the amount of UI the users need to learn, and perhaps more reusable agents and functionalities too. Like once one agent is live and running, then anyone can sort of call that agent, right, to get something done. So there's more interoperability and reusability for the effort. So I imagine this future where, like most of the DApp interfaces disappear. And there's this like Twitter quote by Naval saying like AI is going to eat UI, right? And so I feel like that not only is going to happen in Web3, but also Web2 in general, starting with this. And definitely finance is a big aspect of it. And right now, like commerce is all the conversation too, right? It's like just having agent buy stuff. So like, we're like at the precipice of that transition. And it's a transition of like user behavior, right? From just using applications, mobile apps to using a chat. It's a transition in terms of trust, also from not trusting AI to trusting AI. Eventually the traditional knowledge of what an application is going to change, right? And that's why I like to call it like application abstraction, right? And I think AI is also really great at like aggregating information, both from like consuming the information but also executing the information. So users don't have to like manually curate information or manually go to different dApps or protocols or chains to get something done. It can all be like streamlined massively, both from like a read and write perspective.
Yeah, I think that the trust in AI generally, it reminds me of kind of social media. It reminds me of blockchain and crypto as well. Probably has an easier ride in terms of perception than crypto has in its run so far. But I think that it's something that will like only just keep accelerating as people get more used to using these programs in their day-to-day as well as on chain. And I actually think that AI will eat UI is an interesting idea because I feel like I have this idea, and a lot of people have, where it's build it and they will come is kind of dead. It's kind of over, right? Distribution is what matters in today's information age, social media age. And so we get to a point where, you have these companies that are fighting to own these end user relationships, right? There was this big idea around fat wallet thesis where those that owned, these end users, they could charge fees, they could dictate order flow, that kind of thing. Now what you're saying is basically, okay, well, if I can build a UI that is effectively a natural language model, an LLM for humans to interact with in this chat format, then I can then have this control over the user relationship and the order flow. So would you say that this is like, has this been part of your thought process as to how you want to turn Newton into a more kind of like revenue generating front end to a owning these user relationships? Like, how are you thinking about the kind of business model and revenue around the order flow and the ownership of these end user relationships that you will have if you can execute on making kind of Newton be this top of funnel for Web3, for crypto as a whole?
Yeah, as of now, we're very focused on what the protocol can enable,
Okay.
right? And one analogy that I like to make is like Farcaster protocol and Warpcast, right? Warpcast is a great demonstration of the protocol. It's a great experience for the end users as well, right? So we see the same way with the Newton client, which we announced with Newton.xyz, and then the Newton protocol infrastructure underneath. Because it's such a new thing, if we don't really show what the end-to-end experience really look like, it'll be hard for people to really understand it. Back to the beginning of like telling that story and helping people really see the vision, right? So I think with Web3, helping people see the vision and resonate with it is super important, because it's not just up to one company to build it all, right? We're probably going to build some of the initial like native agents. Then we're going to have this agent marketplace that third-party developers can plug in their agents. And then in the future, there could be different front ends and clients for the protocol as well, right? So that is the vision, is to be pretty credibly neutral around the protocol by enabling more agent use cases through improving trust, right? While having our Newton client be like that initial experience for the users. And maybe we could use that to help some of the agent developers to get adoption as well, like through our community. So yeah, like we called it our recent launch, the Black Triangle moment. It's like a story with the PlayStation 1. It's like when everything's hooked up from the hardware to software end to end, it's like that first demonstration. But we are very much looking forward to evolve, right, with the community and ecosystem. Basically, we're getting a lot of feedback on what agent to build next, what token assets to support next. So I see this as like a highly collaborative process with the ecosystem, but centered around the protocol.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about what agents would be useful for me, it'd be some sort of, automations around, I think, strategies that I wouldn't have previously known about, something like DeFi strategies, yield strategies. That also something that would identify consistent opportunities in the market, with some sort of positive hit rate, right? Obviously, that's like hard to do probably, but I think that would be something that people would want to see. I've seen some iterations of this where, you can ask one of these LLMs with regards to like, okay, what is the, what are the best looking opportunities out there? I think that's cool. I think that also like tracking different on-chain movements is cool, and getting a bit of a rundown as to like what's happening. What's particularly interesting is that you can put these agents together into a composable manner. And that's something that I would like to see more of, where there's these agents that I use and that I have ownership of theoretically, or they are kind of my agents. And then I can then go and interact with those, within my company, within, friends, the community, and start to kind of see things happen together, copy trading, social strategies, group investments, syndicating, lots of like interesting ideas that I think we've yet to scratch the surface of. But I think you guys are onto it, where it's centered around trust. It's centered around the idea that I should actually be willing to kind of trust these tools with my capital.
Yeah, that's right. It's because it's not too difficult to build these capabilities, but it's difficult to get the trust across.
And do you think users really care that much right now about that?
I think so. I think for more serious scenarios, like for like meme coin, like more speculative use case, maybe Telegram bots.
Well, yeah. So these Telegram bots, they've always just been like seed phrase, like either insert your seed phrase or deposit the funds and then use them. So that's like a little bit different than what we're talking about here.
Right. Yeah. And that's what like Web3 is like more used to.
Right.
But for these like more speculative scenarios. But if you were really talking about getting everyday users in and feeling comfortable about this, that sort of trust is important. Or even for like more serious use cases beyond the the scope that which is provided by Telegram bots, right? I think just not handing full custody of your private key and assets to like a unknown agent or bot in the background, it's already miles ahead in terms of security. Think of it more like Google OAuth, right? Where you're authorizing Google like some read and write access, and you would do the same for like agents and sort of providing that guardrail in terms of what it can do, what kind of parameters and limit it can perform within, and making sure that the agents can't go beyond those boundaries. And I think that's really, really important for like security and trust going forward.
So how did you enforce guardrails then, right? Like how do you make sure that agents aren't going rogue? Is it through some sort of like cryptographic proving? Is it through some sort of like rule sets? Like how are you creating these like agents that are bound within a set of parameters and are theoretically impossible to do something that's not within these parameters? Yeah.
So to start, this is sort of an innovation that came with smart accounts. We work with our partners, Biconomy and Rhinestone, to create this smart account infrastructure underneath, which allows the users to create these things called session keys. And then the session keys are bound with like a specific set of parameters, like maximum of X token that you can spend. And then because everything there is on chain, the agents can only perform those actions that are specified, right, by the permission and the session key. So that's what it is like today with what we just launched. But in the future, we're looking to allow more expressive type of permissions by leveraging like real-time or oracleized data. So for example, you can make it so that the agent can only trade if the sentiment is bullish, right? Which kind of involves off-chain data, kind of like Chainlink style, right? So I think that's going to unlock even more use cases, and that's going to involve a lot of the more like deeper tech, such as like ZK circuits and all of that. So we're going to be leveraging more of like ZK technology there.
So it's imperative then that this kind of trust layer is built within the system from the start, rather than adding it on later, because you want to create these guardrails that effectively enable agents to operate within a set of constraints proactively, and then not having rogue agents. So do you not think that these agents are just going to be able to outsmart your session key, or eventually be able to just operate outside of the guardrails? Like isn't the whole point to have these super intelligent, almost human brain-esque things? So are they not just going to be able to reprogram around what you've built for them?
I think there's like an amount of art in this, right? Okay. Because if the permissions are too granular, then it kind of defeats the purpose. But you can't not have the guardrails, right? So I believe there's like a middle point that can sort of emerge from like active usage on what is like the right set of permissions. So I think that's going to be really interesting to like discover in this process. But it's something that like in the light paper I called scoped autonomy, right? It's like you want to give the agent some autonomy to operate, but within certain scope. So maybe it's something like you can only allocate up to, I don't know, $1,000 worth in total USD a day. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe it's something that's a bit more, a bit more like detailed, right? So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see that. We're going to sort of iterate into the right settings, but starting really, really simple and then adding more as we go.
Okay, very cool. Now, kind of zooming out from Newton and from crypto AI, and just more philosophically, what are some of your kind of ethical or moral thoughts around the recent developments of AI, specifically kind of stemming from your open source background? Do you think that we are in a peculiar spot more broadly for companies OpenAI, Anthropic, Cursor, et cetera, who are building these kind of corporate-owned LLMs and that aren't open sourced? How do you feel about the current progression of the stage of AI today?
Yeah, so philosophically, I think, I have a lot of trust in the world to figure things out, right? Like for example, maybe in the beginning is the fastest to make progress with more like centralization. So these companies are moving really quickly, painting a really great picture of what AI could be for everyday users. And then problems will start emerging, right? But the world sort of responds to that, right? So now there's a lot of conversations about open source models. There's a lot of conversations about setting guardrails, more transparency, like audit logs for these AI agents. So I think, yeah, the world is reacting to that, especially as it enters the realm of more serious use cases, like when an agent is touching money, right? Or like, I don't know, healthcare or other type of sensitive tasks, or just even companies that are using AI, right? Like from like a corporate perspective. So I think that's all. That's like sort of the next iteration. That wave is coming, and there's a lot of people that's like looking at it. So that's why like a lot of the privacy, confidential compute, like ZK, like all of that is emerging as like a response to address this. And we're now getting, so that's like on the verifiability side, but even just on the model side, there's a lot better like open source model now with DeepSeek, and so even that side is being democratized. So I think maybe an ideal outcome would be, so there's still going to be like decentralized models that's like pay to play, but the average is also good enough, right? Like 7, 8 out of 10, right? With the open source stuff. So yeah, like I think whenever there's a problem, I believe people have the ingenuity to really solve those, and that's sort of what we saw, right? Before we really start unleashing the agents on just buying stuff for users without security and guardrail, we're sort of building that boat before that wave comes, right? And that's sort of what's been really compelling for me about crypto and Web3 is this ability for this whole community to build something to that precedes its time, right, by many years. It's just like DeFi and like stable coins and like RWAs, and now it's like finally all starting to click together. So these things take time, but the beauty of Web3 is that you get to build a lot of these before the actual urgent need comes. Yeah.
Ironically, I feel like the crypto AI sector is like 6 to 12 months behind the AI sector in San Francisco. I don't know if that's true or not, but
sometimes it feels like that.
Okay.
But for me, we're trying to actively look at what's happening there and stay really close to the scene. Yeah.
So coming back to Newton, you guys have recently just put out your Genesis launch, this dollar cost averaging agent. We spoke a bit earlier about what we would consider to be some of the next ideas. And you kind of mentioned that there's a lot of possibilities, right? It's just a matter of kind of doing it the right way. What do you think is going to come in the upcoming pipeline for agents on Newton? What can the community expect to have in the coming months for, on the product side when it comes to agents?
Yeah, so we get a lot of asks on yield optimizer.
Okay.
So we're planning that out. We're figuring out what's the right scope for this. There's a lot of asks on supporting more assets just for everything. There's been asks on like risk assessment, having AI do that for the end user. So there's a lot. So for us, it's more like making a decision on what we want to build natively and what we want to open up, right, to third-party developers. Like personally, I'm eager to get in this sort of hackathon mode, just playing around, showing demos on all these sort of capabilities, and just get feedback from end users. But yeah, just personally, I would use the yield optimizer myself. I think that'd be pretty useful for me. So in a lot of the times, we're like building this for ourselves and our team as well.
Yeah, I think those would be interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out, and how this space looks in about 12 months, because I think that there's going to be rapid progress in the actual models and LLM capabilities. And that paired with these kind of growth of the institutional adoption of crypto, as well as this broader kind of bullish trend currently. There's a world where the adoption cycle of this, of this kind of bull run per se is centered around adopting people into these natural language models and them touching the chain without ever actually like needing to touch the chain, which I think is like particularly, it's compelling, and it's also just a much better reality than what we've existed in 2020 and 21, where it was really just like Ethereum, and then Solana came about, and now we have a ton of fast, cheap chains, but still have this UX problem. It's like we don't really have a block space problem anymore, but we have this kind of UX problem still. Yeah. And so I think like this is coming at the right time. It's just a matter of, the question, like, will users want to use LLMs and natural language models to interact on chain? Will they trust it? And can they be educated to trust it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, that's right. And then it's just overall very, very exciting time where a lot of these other technologies are maturing too, like stable coins getting more adoption, RWAs, tokenized stocks, right, getting adoption. So like crypto has been like this experimental like playground that keeps maturing these technologies, right? And imagine like you can then have these things that's tested in the crypto ecosystem applied to stable coins or RWAs. So you can have like portfolio rebalancing of, not only crypto, but also real stocks and assets potentially too. Or using stablecoins for commerce to pay for things. I think agent experience will be really great at like buying a collection of things, or like booking something that's like pretty complex, like a weekend getaway, right? So I think all of those will be enabled through all these rails, and I feel like it's going to be faster and faster. All the stuff that crypto industry has been working on as a whole, to really connecting that with the mainstream users and use case around AI. And I think personally, I think like a smart wallet experience plus stable coins will be much better and cheaper than like these virtual credit cards, right? That I have to keep track of for like a Web2 agent experience. So in many aspects, like Web2 AI is ahead of Web3, but also Web3 is ahead of Web2 in some aspects here. And I don't see those as very separate industries. And I think it needs to be proactively trying to figure out how the two can really consolidate. And I think this is sort of the opportunity to do that when all of these things are maturing at the same time.
Yeah. I think the democratization of access to these different agents, or if you guys are able to ship a yield optimizer and different trading strategies and others, there starts to be a compelling case for those with little to no financial market skills able to have a completely different advantage and situation in financial markets as a result of using these hyper intelligent agentic forces. That, and then even the non-financial use cases, right? I think that's something that you're passionate about, right? Kind of returning to the fundamentals of crypto. And so I know you've been thinking a bit about that. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts around these non-financialized use cases of, agents in blockchain or in this space that you think are particularly compelling as well.
I think a big part of it that's top of my head is privacy and like confidential use cases. Because right now people are submitting just crazy amount of personal and intimate data to these AI, and I think at some point that's gonna become a problem. So I feel like like that anything that's like private would be great, and there's already a lot of like local AI usage as well.
Yeah. So what does that mean? It means that you have this like your own LLM or your own model running on your own hardware.
Yeah, on your own computer,
Yeah.
right? Like it just coincidentally, my previous co-founders from the Kitematic project we sold to Docker, they started Olama, which is a way to run local LLMs, like the Docker for LLMs.
And what's the advantage to running a local LLM?
So it's all private.
Okay.
You're not really sending these to like a server in the.
So you get access to the same models like DeepSeek or any of these open source models.
Yeah.
But then when you input your prompts, you're just storing that data on your own like device, basically.
Yeah, like the chat logs is like on the device.
But you get access to the same amount of intelligence per se.
So long as the computer can run it.
Right.
Right. So there's like some limitations based on your computers, but also it's pretty cool because let's say you're flying on the plane and there's no Wi-Fi, you can still access intelligence, right?
Yeah.
On your computer. So it's pretty neat. In the future, maybe some kind of a hybrid model too.
That sounds like something that's going to get massively adopted.
Yeah.
Is it highly expensive right now to do that, or is it a lot of space, or what's the restraint right now?
It's like GPUs, like the compute capabilities of your computer. And that's why I think maybe it would be like a hybrid type of model where you're running some models and execution environments in the cloud, right? And then you combine that with local. So maybe there's kind of a routing where for basic, like, I don't know, things that correct my English, it could be like a cheaper model on the computer. Whereas for more advanced, like financial workloads, that can be routed into this verifiable agent in the cloud.
And so that brings me to the idea that there's going to be a future where people are going to be hoarding hardware to be able to run local LLMs and just compete with each other on who has got the most intelligence.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just kind of like this bifurcation of if you have capital and if you have some drive, these tools can help you a lot. But if you don't have capital to be able to pay for the compute, basically, then you're at a disadvantage. And then that combined with drive, but it even seems like the local version is like you're getting even more, privacy and ability without actually having to use, some of these major companies, basically.
Right. And then some of the TE stuff, it's in a way, it's like kind of similar to a local environment.
Right.
Where it's like a TE with a GPU and your model, sort of everything runs there.
Okay.
In that.
So the model runs in the TE.
Yeah, it uses the GPU TE. So I think, it's almost like a cloud equivalent of what you would run locally.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Sean, what is your upcoming vision for the coming months ahead for Newton? What do you plan to achieve? And then it's about time to wrap.
Yeah, I would say we've been receiving like an overwhelming amount of enthusiasm about what we just announced, and our team is actually getting together this week to take all the feedback and like prioritize, and we already started executing on some of the new agents that is coming up, and also really think about the marketplace, what it means for developer to plug into the experience and getting other developers to participate. So there's a lot of like ideas, feedback. We're like sort of consolidating, building a plan, and continuing to execute. But yeah, we intend to keep up the momentum and keep showing and demonstrating our vision with what we're building.
Awesome. Sean, thanks for your time, man. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.